Hello and welcome to Inside Out with Assaad Mohanna. I'm Michael Gaines and glad you're joining us today as we continue our conversation here, bringing you insight and perspective from leaders in the energy industry from around the world. And we're glad to be able to bring those conversations to you each week right here on Inside Out. Today's conversation is going to be one that I know that you will enjoy. We have the opportunity to have a partner and a leader in the oilfield services arena join us today, and know that it will be a great conversation. So be sure to stick around for our conversation with Mr. Robert Drummond, who is with NexTier Oilfield Services. He is the president and CEO. So we are very honored to have him, and we'll introduce him in just a moment. Before we do, we are going to go over to Shelby Domain to talk about how you can be a part of today's conversation and get your questions in for Assaad or our guest, Mr. Drummond as well. Hey, Shelby.
Hey, Michael. I'm really excited to be here. I think it's going to be a really excellent conversation here in just a little bit. If you're watching this now, whether you're at work or at home, if you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, if you want to get involved in the show, that is, if you would like to ask any questions or let us know any of your insights or comments for, like Michael said, for Michael himself, for Assaad, or for Mr. Drummond, you can do so by commenting. In the comment, again, regardless of where you're watching, I'm in all three comment sections, monitoring those throughout the show. So if you have any questions or comments, put them there, and we're going to get to as many as we can in the time that we have. I also wanted to mention, if you have any questions later on after the show and you would like to get those questions answered, we have put Assaad in the hot seat. You can message him on LinkedIn. We have his LinkedIn. That's the name you search. You find him on LinkedIn. He's also tagged in the post, in the content of this live stream, the caption. So you can find him there, or you can search his name on LinkedIn and reach out to him there. If you want to watch any past episodes of the show, and again, maybe you have questions for those too, you can give to Assaad. But if you'd like to watch any past episodes, you can do so at nov.com/live. We have that's the go-to place where we have all the entire database of all past episodes. So you can go there, check them out. And again, if you have questions, just send them on to Assaad, and I'm sure he can get them answered for you.
All right. Well, thanks, Shelby. Look forward to getting some of the viewer questions, some of your questions in the audience throughout our program. Shelby will be jumping in as those come across the wire. So we're looking forward to you being a part of the conversation. So speaking of great conversations, it's of course my pleasure to always introduce the guy that we go to here at NOV to get our questions answered, Assaad Mohanna, Director of Business Strategy. Assaad, I'm always glad to have a great conversation with you each week. I unlike the markets where those can be ups and downs, conversing with you is always a plus in my book. So whatever you do to keep it going, just don't stop doing that.
So great to see you as always, Michael. You're absolutely right. There's always a positive lining, a positive thing going on, however bad the situation is.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, well, let's go ahead, Assaad, and certainly want to talk about the highlights of the week and things that have been happening. I know, as always, you've got an ear to the ground and keeping a pulse on what's been going on. So, over this last week, what were the key highlights that came across your desk?
Well, Michael, the highlight these days is earnings season. We are in the middle of fourth quarter earnings results as well as 2020 year-end results, which have been quite anticipated just because of how significant 2020 has been. The projections were for the fourth quarter to be a slight improvement for our industry as a whole. It was the case for some players, for others it was not. One thing's for sure is that everybody took this year as an opportunity to, and this is my silver lining, to reinvent themselves, to restructure, to re-emphasize previous cost reduction efforts and come up with new ones. So in the last week, we've heard from the OFS world. We've heard from big companies like Schlumberger and Halliburton and others. And really, we heard that rhetoric over and over again. The reinvention of how we address the North American market. How do we keep growing internationally and keep that coming? Because that's where business is coming from these days, or growing faster. The rules have changed. Investors are looking for not just growth, but returns, and that makes things change quite a bit. Now you have to really look at becoming a lot more asset light. Your capital returns have to significantly improve beyond cost of capital. And in that regard, really what we've seen is some companies focus heavily on digital, some others focus on core competencies, and perhaps in some situations exiting businesses where it's become more commoditized. On the operator's perspective, we also heard from some majors, and the most prominent one being Exxon on Tuesday this week, where we heard about some big write-offs, about $20 billion, probably the largest we've heard about in the year. And that was really primarily Exxon looking at their asset portfolio, looking at their XTO inherited assets from 2010, really the gas assets that are not so profitable today, and deciding that their next work's really going to be on above average assets, namely Guyana, as well as the Permian Basin. So that trend continues. We also heard from Exxon the creation of a low carbon business, something that I believe Exxon's been working on for years, just made it a bit more official these days. And I think overall, like I said, that this is an opportunity to all these organizations to become a little bit lighter, so that we enter in 2021 and 2022 in better shape and able to sustain anything that is, and quote from Exxon, cost of supply lower than $35. We've heard the number 40 over and over, but the 35 is a strong push to making drilling and production a lot more efficient. So plug for NOV's earnings coming on here on Friday. So that is coming up as well.
All right. Well, sounds, as always, like you said, earnings season always brings quite a few surprises, but also some good insight into what's happening. So yeah, looking forward to continued positive momentum in that space. So, all right. Well, I know, Assaad, we're going to, I think at this point, go ahead and pivot and introduce our guest today. Really honored to have Mr. Robert Drummond, the president and CEO of NexTier Oilfield Solutions. So Mr. Drummond is, so prior to NexTier, he served as the president and CEO of Key Energy Services from 2016 to 2018, joined Schlumberger in 1984, and spent more than 30 years in a variety of capacities, including engineering, marketing, operations, and leadership positions, culminating with a role as President North America from 2011 to 2015. So, of course, Mr. Drummond has served in many different boards and capacities, including the Petroleum Equipment Suppliers Association, advisory to the board, or advisory board for the University of Alabama College of Engineering, as well as several other groups and entities. So really glad to have him here. And I know Mr. Drummond is a very proud graduate from University of Alabama, receiving Bachelor of Science in Mineral Petroleum Engineering. So with all of that, Mr. Drummond, glad to have you here on Inside Out. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Michael. I'm honored to be here with you two guys. A lot of talent in the room, except on my end, maybe.
Well, I wish I could agree. I mean, Assaad for sure. I've still got to get my Blazer game going. You guys got that going on, but we're definitely glad to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm honored.
It is great to have you, Robert. And I'll maybe start off by saying, people will say we're having Robert Drummond because of the most recent announcement of our partnership. But seeing your work and what NexTier has done, I think we'd have had Robert Drummond on the show anyway.
Thank you for saying that. Thanks for paying attention to NexTier. We're very proud of our company.
Robert, I'll kick off with just that. 2020 has been a tough year for many companies, many really good companies that have lived some really bad downturns in the past. We've seen offshore drillers, we've seen onshore drillers struggle, we've seen the E&P world consolidate quite significantly. We've even seen other frac companies give up on that space or really retract. NexTier hasn't. How do you survive in an environment like that?
Well, honestly, 2020 was difficult on everyone, wasn't it? And I would say that for NexTier, we formed a merger between Keane and C&J back in November of 2019. And as we rolled into Q1 of last year, we were really on a track. Our integration was going well. We had 30 plus fleets working frac in the United States, and we were very pleased where we were as a company. Then COVID happened, and the market frac probably had north of 320 fleets working in the U.S., dropped it to maybe sub 60 over a period of only a couple of months. And that was the bottom of the market. And that was a very challenging, situation for any company to have that kind of swing in activity. But because we were in the middle of an integration, we had a lot of good data on the company. We knew where we were going organizationally, and we knew where all our numbers were. When you think about two companies in that position, we were able to, I think, adapt very quickly to the scenario that we had. And what that really was about was kind of rationalizing our assets, taking a position on what we thought the future of the market was going to look like, and then sizing ourselves for that activity, not for the bottom, but for where we kind of think it's going to be now and as we roll into 2022, and taking care of our assets so that we had a readiness program put in place. We're spending like $1 million a month, keeping our warm stacked assets rotated through a system for keeping them up to speed and tested, so that we can deploy fleets very quickly. And that's starting to pay dividends for us right now as we are, ramping back up in the sector. I mentioned sub 60 in the market. It's about 160 now. So you can see we've made a lot of progress. Mm-hmm. But we have plenty more to do. The evolution of our company, as you mentioned, many people are bringing digital into the story. But for us, it's becoming the key way for us to operate. Having COVID and the merger for Catalyst, having a digital program that we had started investing in late 2018 has really changed the game for us. So we really like where we stand competitively in the market, and forming our partnership here with NOV, we think it's going to take us to the next phase. That
operational awareness and agility in adapting to this environment is impressive.
Thank you.
I want to really talk about ESG. Really, I mean, today everybody's had to change how we do things. We talked about how operators are doing that, the service companies. That leaves no one behind. ESG is grown in focus, especially for the investment community. When we hear large investment firms making ESG a necessary item on the list, where are you in terms of our industry getting credit for the ESG? I mean, somebody coined it really nicely the other day. We've always done it, but it's just been called something today. Do you agree?
I do agree. And I think when you ask, do we get enough credit? I'd say, it depends on who you're talking about. And our customers and our investors are and have been educating themselves about where we are as a sector and where we are as, vendors for our customers and potential investment opportunities. But in general, I'd say the answer is no. I mean, we probably don't get enough credit. But we've been beginning to change that, I'd say, over the last year or so. And, more people, because of that, are beginning to appreciate that our industry's made energy reliable and affordable for people all over the world, and enable them to improve the quality of their life for millions and millions of people. As quality of life improves, people then have the ability to focus on improving, their environmental footprint individually or as organizations. It's my belief that that's fundamental to global sustainability, continuing to progress. I like to think about the U.S. economy has been very successful in reducing carbon emissions by converting and substituting natural gas as a substitution for coal across the economy. And that's kind of what we're thinking and doing as part of our strategy at NexTier, is substituting natural gas for diesel. And it also reduces emissions and reduces carbon footprint for us and our customers. And if you think about our industry, it's populated by a lot of educated scientists and engineers, and all of us like to live in a healthy and clean environment. And we believe that decisions should be made about that based on science.
Right.
So I get pretty excited about being a part of the industry myself. I'm proud to be a part of it, and I think our collective voice needs to be heard in the mix about how we look at sustainability and how we look at transitions. Right. Forums like this one is an example of how we can do it. You mentioned earlier the Petroleum Equipment Suppliers Association. Just FYI, recently, like last week, merged with the AESC, and we formed a new organization called the Energy Workforce and Technology Council. And that they go out educating the public, bringing information to policymakers, so the people who are making decisions around policy can have the whole story with accurate information. So I kind of think, there's a lot of things happening. We've always been good at managing the environment and safety in our sector. We move around a lot. We're not like a factory that's located in one place all the time. And we do it very responsibly. But getting the word out is important. And I would, at the end, just add that I think it should begin in the education system with youth, so that we can begin to let them hear the whole message from the beginning,
Yeah.
No, that's really, and I appreciate those words. I actually wanted to follow up on Assaad's question. So, when you're looking at ESG, of course, E&P demand plays a role in that space as well. So do you see a difference between maybe a public versus private E&Ps and their approach when it comes to ESG?
So what I'd say is a company like NexTier, being a service company, we need to be able to work for a broad spectrum of customers. And in U.S. land, we have the biggest IOCs to the smallest independents in the world that work in the U.S. How you address their particular policies and their objectives can vary a bit. But when it comes to ESG, I have not seen a giant difference. I would say the bigger companies that have an international public footprint, they do spend more effort on their messaging, as you would expect. But I would say that for the most part, what's happening in the E&P base in the U.S., in my view, is that the properties are kind of migrating through consolidation and through sales a bit to the operator who will ultimately delineate the reservoir, ultimately produce the reservoir all the way through its depletion cycle. And because of that, they're looking at value propositions on a bigger scale. They're not just looking at today's price or today's value situation, but they're looking at it to the end of the reservoir. So with that, you're able to look at infrastructure differently and on a more value perspective. So I'd say some of the big public IOCs will look at it and act in a manner that's slightly different. But if a private or a large independent have the same objective to produce a reservoir to its end, you will see them act very similarly from my perspective.
Then a quick follow-up for you. Can you talk a little bit about, so we talked a bit about ESG. I'm curious to know the perspective from your perspective, from NexTier's perspective on ESG specifically, and again, for folks that may not be familiar, so environmental, social, and governance initiatives. So how do you view ESG? And how do you view, maybe a little more broadly, maybe the oilfield services sector and how they can incorporate ESG initiatives, both today in a short term, but also long-term strategies?
It's a lot about responsibility. I appreciate the question. It's with us in NexTier, it starts with our core values. Subset of those are do the right thing, take responsibility, innovate. And when we look at our company, we're very proud of our safety record and of our risk management performance. Not only I would say that about NexTier, but I would say that about the whole OFS sector compared to what our reputation may be among people who would not know much about the business. But the foundation of our business and our relationship with our customers built around ESG and around safety and things like that. From an innovation perspective, it's kind of part of our DNA at NexTier, and we're trying to constantly implement new technologies that eliminate waste, optimize performance. And at the end of the day, that's why we appreciate our partnership with NOV so much, is because we kind of got like core values. The current and, I would say even future investment plans that we have are aligned with these values. And I'm talking about as we migrate to the next generation technologies around frac and how we lower our carbon footprint. And, example of that, it reflects on our partnership around the NOV's ideal fleet, electric fleet. So I think you'll see us, we're going to continue to strategically invest to make cost-effective and easy transition for our customers to go to use natural gas to displace diesel. For what we do in this part of the business, that's one of the biggest moves that we can make on reducing carbon footprint. Because when you think about one frac fleet, historically would generate would consume about $12 million in diesel per year. So there's a lot to be had there in improving, the emissions profile around that. So OFS companies in general, I think we're all kind of in that boat of migrating towards using a readily and clean available source of in the market. What we need is, the capital to be able to do that and the profitability to come back post-COVID to accelerate that.
And I echo and share your feelings there, Robert, on innovation being in the DNA. It's how we do things. It's looking at technology and always taking it a step further, investing in R&D, investing in people. Doesn't stop with a downturn, but it carries on even in tough times. Because that's when you come up with really effective stuff. I want to maybe pivot towards you've alluded to your natural gas fleet and your capabilities, and I think you have one of the largest fleets that are natural gas powered in the U.S. And that's probably one of the more balanced spaces, more balanced markets compared to conventional fleets. $12 million for a diesel. That's monstrous. Could you discuss a little bit about your low carbon pumping capabilities, whether it's dual fuel or e-frac, e-fleets initiatives today, and how are they different from what others are doing?
Yeah, I would like to address that. You accurately point out that it's a bit of stratification in the frac market. If you look at the whole thing as a whole, certainly because of the activity reductions related to COVID, it's oversupplied. But when you look at the top part of that stratosphere of the frac capacity that is able to consume natural gas, that part of the market probably represents something like 25% is in a case mostly fully sold out. And the reason is driven because the obvious benefits of consuming natural gas is the biggest part of that. And that's both financially and from an ESG or emissions perspective. So at NexTier, we've committed all of our future growth capital to equipment that lowers emissions, essentially natural gas driven. As the market transitions in that direction, we believe there's going to be multiple technologies in frac that address it. And it will be both, as you mentioned, dual fuel, dual fuel engine is an engine that burns natural gas and diesel, and it tries to burn natural gas preferentially to diesel. There's a couple of different tiers in that arena. Some do it better than others. And then there's electric, which is often powered by mobile electricity generation from turbines or reciprocating engines that consume 100% natural gas. And then there's gas-powered turbine direct drive pumps. So say 3 different kinds of systems that could be what we move more towards in the future. Mm-hmm. And in NexTier, we're committed, to providing the solutions that our customers need, really, but at price points that meet their desired results in the space. And that's the key thing about how fast the transition, I think, moves from where we are today, mostly diesel, to natural gas, maybe ultimately to grid power electric that you can plug an electric fleet into. But today, some of our key customers are making plans, for power and frac pumps electrically. And we are in the process this month of beginning to test NOV's ideal electric system with one of those high efficient customers. The second thing that we've done in our strategy to facilitate that process is to create a power solutions business unit, which is essentially there to help our customers make that transition to natural gas easy. That means treating field gas and making it in a condition that would feed these engines properly to allow them to work consistently, or to transport compressed natural gas to our fleets that you can control 100% the quality of it. And that business unit is a little bit different for us, and we're really excited about it. Got a lot of talent in the group, and we have now in our mix here the ability not only to help ourselves improve our carbon footprint, but help our customers do it cost effectively. So that's kind of what we're doing inside NexTier to address the best opportunity to make a difference. And I believe that's kind of examples why we as an industry had to be part of this transition. You just can't cut us out and think it's going to happen. We can make it happen.
Yeah. I like how you look at it. It's not just an ESG approach. It's not just doing it because investors are demanding it, but how can we extract value from it and help our customers really deliver that to their investors as well?
Exactly right.
Without it being too contrived, Robert, I think we'd appreciate. I like to think I know why, but I'd like to hear from you why NOV and why the ideal frac.
Well, look, I think that why NOV is a partner, reputation was certainly a factor. I had the opportunity to meet with Clay and see that our core values as a company is the same. Customer-focused guys like Scott Livingston, was able to listen to what we were trying to accomplish. We were able to get to a position that made it work for, the 3 of us, us, you, and the customer.
Right.
And engineers like Travis Bolt, who have been for multiple years now in R&D studying the designs and looking at the first generation of electric systems that are already out there and looking at ways to make it more fit for purpose for where the frac operations are today. Mm-hmm. And that, this pump that you guys have is 5,000 hydraulic horsepower power ends, allowing us to have higher rates per pump, reducing our footprint at the location. The thing that maybe swung me, being an Oilfield engineer at one point in the past, was the focus around packaging, around being operationally efficient. When you think about rig up, rig down, how do you do that safely, and how do you consider, efficiency and position on the well site and all those things. And you also we looked at who you used as your manufacturers for the key components, and it was people we were familiar with. And, lastly, I'd say a lot around those core values again, because honestly, with our customers, we like to have long-term relationships. And I want to be like that with our vendors as well. And you can't do that if you totally see the world differently. And I think that we're on the same page.
I think, one thing I've learned is not an achievement organization or anything that happens out there happens without good people, trust, and a good relationship. So you mentioned some names there. We're proud to have on our side. We're proud to have this relationship with you guys, and definitely look at this as a great relationship to go forward.
All right. Yeah, I'll second that for sure. So, and to your comments earlier, Robert, I wanted to circle around. Could you talk a little bit about what the next steps are when we're looking at the field trials for the ideal fleet, NOV ideal fleet? I know that there was some discussion about that before, and just wanted to see where that is currently.
That's a good question. One thing about us that I'd highlight before I answer the question is that many of my team came from big companies that always wanted to invent it here and then deploy it. And NexTier, we want to be recognized more as the one who deploys. We deploy technology in an innovative manner to be the one that extracts the value. We don't have to be the one, we believe, that builds everything. That led to our relationship, with you guys. And doing one thing that most of us learned in working for these bigger companies that have huge R&D budgets was that field testing is so critical to reduce the risk profile. And the risk profile and risk management around new products and deployment, you've got a lot of components, but certainly you got to manage the safety aspect. You have to manage the technical risks. So you come into the market more likely to hit a home run in the beginning than having to, step back a bunch of times. And then third is around risk management, around operationally. How do you deploy it into what you're doing so you can transition without disrupting operations? So we're starting that process this month with Ideal, and we're doing it with one of our highest efficiency customers, very important customer for us. Between you and us and them, we're putting together this field test program together. But when you talk about electric, one of the things that's the most important aspect of the issue that's got to be solved is the power solution. And it's not only technical, but it's also commercially. How do you bring electricity in a manner that can power a frac fleet, which is, call it 30 megawatts of power? It's a huge amount. And the grid can't handle that in very many places. You're going to have to supplement the grid, or you're going to have to totally replace it. And that means using a turbine, a big jet engine turbine to create electricity, or reciprocating engines that burn natural gas, or even diesel perhaps, but natural gas is the best way for it to go that way, that allow you to be modular in how you support an electric frac fleet. So part of our field test is going to be sampling more than one of those options. And then ultimately, on the backside of the field test, which we feel like we've done the work on the front end to make that real efficient process, we just have to get commercial agreements together with our customers that allow us to see a return to the end of a project. It could be price related, it could be term related, but when you look at it from the frac industry's perspective, making a jump from transitioning to current equipment to electric is going to take a lot of capital. And we still have a great fleet that's fit for purpose out in the field today, doing the work very, very efficiently, and have been delivering year after year deflation to our customers. That fleet has to attrit effectively so we can pull the capital out of it and then transfer it into the next generation. I think this is the dynamic that's occurring, and field test is technically part of it, but the commercial side is also key.
So if you're just joining us, we are talking with Mr. Robert Drummond. He is the president and CEO of NexTier Oilfield Solutions, and we are talking about NexTier and the way they see the world, especially as we look at initiatives such as the EFRAC space and other items. So if you have questions for Robert or Assaad, feel free to put your question in the comment section, whether you're watching us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, and we'll try to get your questions. I see that we've got folks joining us from as far as looks like Algeria, Nigeria, Peru, and a few other places, and as close as right here in Houston. So no matter where you're joining us from, feel free to be a part of our conversation today. So Robert, follow-up for you is really asking you to potentially pull out the crystal ball that I know no one likes to do, but if you had one, we'll just play a hypothetical. If you had a crystal ball and can kind of see in the future, I mean, what do you feel the industry percentage of EFRAC or E-fleets would be by, let's say, the end of 2023? So it's about a little more than 24 months.
Most people will live to regret predictions like that.
Well, I didn't ask it. I'm asking you. So hopefully you don't regret it.
Well, look, I personally think that whole solution is around what's the best, most cost-effective ESG solution for the future that consumes gas. I think that's the story. I've mentioned a number of the factors, and there's a first generation of electric fleets in the field today. It represents a small portion of the total. And I think that it'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15% over the next 2 or 3 years. And that will give the current fleet time to attrit. It'll give the second generation and third generation of electric kind of a time to evolve, and us to get a better solution a more cost-effective solution for the power of generating the electricity. Many of the customers who are going to be doing this are looking at grid power extensions into their infrastructure, into their field, that could partially power an electric fleet, and maybe they'll need to be supplemented, for example. So that as fast as that moves, I think as new capital comes into the frac business, it'll kind of move in that direction. It's going to be an exciting transition. It's going to be something different, and I think better, and we'll be more efficient for it in the end. But I think it's going to take a number of years to happen. But 2023, that is a couple of years out, and I do think 10 or 15% of the market is about what we're looking at, maybe just a little more.
Yeah.
That's pretty broad band.
That doesn't sound like a regrettable prediction. I'll take that.
Thank you. It's a good prediction, and I think if Scott Livingston is listening to us, then he's probably got himself a budgeted for the next couple of years. So he's in good shape. I want to kind of switch gears here a little bit, Robert, with regards to digital. You're leading U.S. completion service provider. You're leading in the wireline plug and perf fleet, as well as dual fuel natural gas powered fleets. All of that requires integration. All of that requires coordination. And all of that requires digital. How's your journey in the digital transition?
Well, as a long-time guy to say, I have got reinvigorated a bit by the opportunities or potential of digital. When you say, why be data-driven? I think about, we're a service industry. We got a lot of people. Managers are very important in how they manage operations, both people and, physical assets. Managers need more data. And I would say when you look at oil and gas in general, maybe it's because of the cyclicality of the market. I'm not sure exactly why, perhaps, but it's a very opportunity-rich environment. From an oilfield services perspective, the digital applications around cost optimization for our operating costs that are high on what we do. It's, I tell you how much diesel was for one fleet. You have power and fluids. You have a lot of maintenance requirements. So doing things around cost optimization using digital is very important for OFS. On the E&P side, I think it's more around production optimization. And I think the digital revolution going on kind of in oil field service, in the oil field, has got the operators working in their sphere initially around production optimization, service companies working in their sphere around cost optimization. And that's where we are in early stages. I think it evolves further later, and I'll get to that maybe in a minute. But the second aspect about why being data-driven, I think, is around the fact that the technical capabilities are evolving and have evolved. And I mean by that, I'm talking about digital capabilities,
right?
Like machine learning, artificial intelligence, the ability to use digital twin modeling around predictive analytics. So you can begin to take action to prevent things from happening before they actually happen. And I mean bad things, failures or incidents or accidents.
Right.
So from an oil field service perspective like us, we're taking that data. First, we had to do the plumbing, a year and a half worth of engineering and work to get the data plumbed in a manner that we could get it all in a unified data model so that accessing the data, both historically and in real time, could be done easily. And then feeding that into our equipment control systems, and then overlaying that with an advanced visualization capability so we could see things in real time. And all of that really just kind of leads into, moving further up the automation curve.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do. And the end of the day, what the results are, we're going to be making we are making much improved decision making. We're moving faster, and we're being more accurate. And I like to think about it. NexTier, we're kind of deploying this kind of digital technology around our operating hub that allows us to eliminate, focusing on the things we can control, eliminating waste, reducing fuel consumption and emissions, and generally improving efficiency in general. Now, I think what happens in the future, though, as we move further down the curve, is going to be more rapid adaptation to this. And you think about endless applications, I think, Internet of Things, where you bring in more sensors that don't exist today to help us do things that we want to do. Right. And we got migration of talent coming in to our company that's completely outside of the oil field that have brought that kind of skill set overlapping with the skill set we already have to really make something happen different. So this is a big deal for us. And I think when you get past that, and we're getting close to getting that the way we like it, then we start thinking about interfacing the two spheres of the customer's digital evolution with ours. And imagine they're working on getting production optimization, and we're looking at frac optimization. You overlap the two circles, and you're able to look backwards and say, when I fracked a job this particular way in the past, looking forward now, I can see much better production. I'm accelerating the learning curve about how to deploy technology. I think it's endless. We got a lot more to go to get smarter around digital.
I'd like to maybe talk a little more about that. And in some of your earlier comments, it, at least to me, seems pretty apparent. I mean, you're really excited about the organization, about your team. Can you talk about some of the changes that you're seeing in the workforce, especially, and I'd like to zero in here specifically as we look at automation, AI, Internet of Things, those, as you just mentioned now, a lot of the skill sets that, traditionally maybe were outside of what was historically a norm in the overall industry. Can you talk a little bit more about those things and how you see that change now that those are becoming more critical to the business?
I'm happy to do so. Use it as a recruiting tool because at the beginning, becoming a data-driven company, our people are more excited about their job. We live our life doing digital things now, everything from iPhones to Netflix, I suppose, and people are more excited about their work, and they're excited about their contributions and the opportunities it presents for them. Right. That's number one. That's the people who are already in the company. And what we're trying to do is, leverage data and automation to make work smarter and safer. And who wouldn't want that? So I mentioned loosely before NextHub. It's what we call our digital operations center. Think about three kind of channels there. You have logistics management that's using AI to keep all the trucks in the right place at the right time, eliminating demurrage, operated by guys who are logistical specialists. Equipment health monitoring, monitored by mechanics and technicians. And then your field engineering group that are field engineers who used to have to spend a lot more of their early part of their career in the field. They can spend now a third of that amount of time actually in the field. They can come into the hub, leverage their experience across a broader base of operations. They're learning 3 or 4 times as fast as they would have otherwise. But there's a whole different mix of people in that mix. In our digital group, we kind of got digital guys plugged in around that are using this expertise, technical expertise that the field engineers and technicians have, but making it in a more user-friendly and visual perspective. So for us, man, we just think it accelerates the rate of learning and the level of experience for our people, and therefore attractive to them. And then people who are digital, technical, the tech gurus call it, want to come in because there's so much low-hanging fruit in oilfield services. That's kind of my view. So it's kind of a win-win. So
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much that helps with operational efficiency, with accuracy in your supply chain, and I guess it just makes it a lot more dynamic and exciting for younger generations to jump into.
They do, and when I don't use that word visualization lightly. When you can go and set up and watch where every single asset's at, and then click on it and go see what the engine operation's doing in that individual asset. I mean, it's a lot like the video game world that some of us grew up in.
Robert, I'm curious, as somebody who's been in the U.S. land market for years, you probably have a pulse on new technology and things that are coming underway that are game changers. What do you think has a chance?
Well, you think about how we got here to start with. It was technology, and I think mostly driven from the service side. Being a service guy, I'm looking at that a long time. Around horizontal drilling, rotary steerable systems, rig automation, multiple well drilling pads. You guys have been building a lot of that equipment, walking rigs. On the frac completion side, the evolution of zipper fracs and plug and play perf gun systems, things like that got us here.
Right.
The future, I think, moves more and more up the curve towards automation in various ways. On the drilling side, many people working on those things, probably more about that than even I do. But on I think the value proposition has evolved. That wasn't too long ago, the operators were taking the position that they used the term unbundling so that they could manage the supply chain in a way that was real segregated. Right. And I think what's happening now is that when you really look at the next level of efficiency, and that was good for that period of time. But I think the way the market's evolving today is that putting things back together, let us use a digital overlay to know where everything is at, and then allow us to integrate to become more efficient around, for like what we do around the frac, and maybe the same thing around the drilling rig on the drilling side, so that you can use some of these digital tools that I'm talking about to reintegrate and make it more efficient as a whole, not individual pieces that are efficient, but the whole system. And we're gaining traction on that already. I call it integrated logistics-based completion services. That's kind of one of the ways we're kind of looking at it.
Right. That's
one thing. And then I would say technologies that enable more reservoir rock to be drilled and fracked more efficiently. And there's so many simul-fracking opportunities that many people are taking up now. It's becoming more and more a bigger part of our business all the time. It's just doing more with less. That's what it's doing. And it's an evolving technology that requires more frac resources at an individual well site. But you're doing a lot more per day, perhaps. But I think the more importantly than what it is, I think we probably don't even know what it's going to be when you get a certain number of years out. but more collaboration between the E&P and the service company on technology development, in my view, needs to happen. I came from a big company. We had a big budget that we did it, and we did it very well. And there's many of our competitors that did the same thing. But that's been squeezed out of the oilfield services sector in a big way, I think. And capital's tight, and it's tight for all of us, the operator and service company alike. But if we're going to address the risk profile around investing in future R&E technology, we need to get better aligned and figure out ways to do it. Perhaps what we're doing together is an example of how to bring it to the market,
Right.
With the least amount of risk. And we got to figure out ways to do that, I think, as a sector.
I was going to say it's a great example of collaboration right there that leapfrogs development and progress in that direction and cost reduction a lot faster than having to do it in-house, like you said earlier.
I agree. We got execution experts with engineering experts, and you get the customer who's the expert about his property.
Yeah,
and we do that right, and we can do it better.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Robert, I'm going to round us out here before we bring Shelby in to ask some questions. And then we've got a couple more questions for you, but we'll save those for the after show in just a few minutes. So really just going to round up by talking about maybe the path ahead when you're looking at continued electrification, specifically in the completions and production space. Do you see, we're talking kind of in a more narrow focus now, but do you see electrification continuing to expand on site, or how do you see that?
So that's a good question. I would say this. I mentioned earlier that the power solution is the most important thing about it. If you spend $25 million on a turbine-driven generating electric solution and you don't use it every day very effectively, it's very difficult to get a return on that kind of investment. So we're going to solve it as an industry, whether it be highline power, grid power that's everywhere that you need it, which is very doubtful in oil field, or a very cost-effective manner to bring modular systems in so you can use, electricity as you need it, when you need it, and move it somewhere else where you could use it efficiently and, with high utilization like you'd want for a factory. I think once we solve that answer, that means the source is going to be available where you need it to be. And then I think everything will kind of move to it. And, everything that's got power that, electric motors are very effective and they last a long time and they can be good. But you've got to address, dealing with mobile electricity. Can you do that cost effectively? And it's expensive and it's challenging. Turbines are really designed to flying way in the air, and they run all the time and they run wide open. And now we got to go up and down. It's just challenging. We will get it sorted out, I believe. And then once we do, we'll see electrification adaptation ramp up.
All right. Well, I think at this point in our program, we're going to go ahead and bring Shelby Dumaine in to see if we can get some of the questions from our viewers who have been typing away in the comment section and following along with our conversation. So, Shelby, I know that you flagged a few that jumped out at you.
I did. Yeah, we got some really excellent questions and comments from our audience. So for the first one, I'm kind of going to combine two that we got, both asking about how oil and gas is evolving and maybe transitioning in two different regions. So if you want to answer for each separately or maybe just touch on one, then I'll leave that up to you. But we got questions specifically about oil and gas evolution in Norway and Brazil. So I was wondering if y'all had any insights for either of those regions.
Look, I'm not an expert necessarily in either region, but what I would say is that oil and gas supply and demand is a global picture. And if you don't get it, the demand is going to be what it's going to be. The supply is going to have to come from somewhere. So it's going to come, if it don't come from one place, it's going to come from another. And Norway's got a long, rich history of oil and gas production. Built a great sovereign wealth fund for the country now that they can live really nicely off of, from my perspective. And I think that they still have a lot of production. They have committed in some ways publicly to slow down investment in that area and most of that's offshore, obviously, nearly all of it, I guess. So I would say that there'll be a balance there between, what does the long term look like from their perspective about the need there, and how much they invest in that region. But I did see recently another field was sanctioned to go forward with further investment, so they have not stopped, but they have been verbally a little bit outspoken about reducing perhaps investment in oil and gas. In Brazil, I think it's more of a developing scenario. I mean, their offshore deep water market is very attractive among all the reservoirs in the world, and they got Petrobras is very technically advanced, and they know how to get the oil and gas out of the ground cost effectively. And I think they have a long runway there. So I think both regions have a little bit different drivers. Norway's further along the curve over time, and Brazil's more developing in that region. They got upside everywhere. So I think it depends on the oil price for sure, because offshore more expensive, I think, mostly than most places on land. So that's the dynamics I would comment on.
Mm-hmm.
I would maybe Robert didn't mention it, maybe, but I'll plug in your efforts in the Middle East through partnerships over there and your knowledge of that market as it grows in the shale space.
Yeah, so we do have a venture that we're joint venture partners with NexTier, who is a company based here in the United States in Houston, but operates exclusively in Middle East and North Africa. And again, here's an example of partnering with best in class for where your strengths and weaknesses are. They have a great position. They got local workforce in the Middle East, North Africa, mm-hmm. And then we were bringing U.S. type frac efficiency, wireline, pump down, perforating, and frac to a market. We worked together at the location, and really quickly brought the frac efficiency up to U.S. standards, and that was, I think, surpassed everyone's expectation. The thing I'd say there is that unconventional resources in the Middle East, they're broad, but they really don't need them yet. So I think Saudi Aramco is a little bit ahead of most of the region when it comes to beginning to develop, in this case, gas resources that will displace, mm-hmm. Their need to burn oil for electricity generation, for example. So it's a good project. It's a great project. We're very honored to be a part of it, and we've got great partners in NexTier.
Yeah,
mm-hmm. Absolutely. So Errol on LinkedIn asked a question. He actually asked it to both you, Robert, and Assaad as well. He's wondering what your thoughts are on the recent peak in hydrogen gas.
Assaad, why don't I let you go first?
I want to talk about quantum computing first.
Yeah.
I mean, hydrogen has been in the headlines quite a bit, particularly green hydrogen, the one that's coming from renewable sources. Definitely an area where the oilfield and oilfield service companies can contribute, I believe, just because of the sheer size of operation companies like NexTier and NOV and many others have handled in the past. So really driving towards hydrogen or even carbon capture, use, and sequestration. All of those are in oil and gas companies' wheelhouse. It's just that it happens that these companies have been extracting oil and gas, and like we mentioned earlier, it happens that we've been working on ESG and in energy transition for years, but it's just been so much more focus on it these days that it's taken shape. Hydrogen is probably not and maybe Robert can chime in, but hydrogen is probably not economical today, but I think everything that we're seeing from government spending and support is in the direction of subsidizing, supporting, reducing costs so that it becomes so. So I think it's a worldwide movement and effort which we encourage.
Well, I think it's certainly an important question, and as I might have stated earlier, that I think we're going to need every energy source that we can get over the long haul, and that hydrogen is very interesting, very attractive for many reasons, and I think that we'll see, I think, a steady stream of investment into trying to make that happen in an environmentally sensitive manner. And I think that'll be it's a long haul in my view, because the economic hurdle there still exists versus, what we're doing now. And I think it's part of the solution, and so is what we do, making it better and better. So all that comes together over time, but I think hydrogen is maybe further out than the average press release would make us think today.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know Michael mentioned the dreaded crystal ball, not wanting to bring it, but I'm going to ask you to bring that out again, this time with a challenge. Tamir on LinkedIn asked if you could come up with 3 words that you think, and this could go for both of y'all, that you think describes the next 5 years in the oil and gas or the energy industry. So 3 words, next 5 years. What do you think?
Go for it, Robert.
Surprisingly up.
That sounds like the title of a great book I'd love to read.
Yeah.
It may take me a little while to write it, maybe, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you, there's, a lot of see that the industry is going through a challenging time these days. But to me, there's so, we jokingly say that there's always a silver lining. I think there's a massive silver lining here. The realization that there are challenges just makes this a lot more exciting to be part of, and it means that there's so much upside that for younger generation, for current workforce in the industry has plenty of room to contribute to. So I know it's a bit more than 3 words, but for me, it's definitely exciting.
We'll work on you condensing that down. And the question wasn't posed to me, but if it were, my response would be change is coming. So I'll just leave it there, and I'll be as safe as you can be.
Yeah. You should have gone first, Michael.
It's okay. I'll let the smart folks.
I needed more time to think on those 3.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, we do have a couple more audience questions, but I think for the sake of time, maybe we could talk about some of those in the after show, or even can be answered in the comments. Yeah. But thank you so much for answering the ones so far, and for involving our audience in it. I always appreciate when guests are willing to take kind of those spur of the moment live questions. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Shelby.
Really good.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Shelby. And at this point, we are going to transition into our after show. So we do invite all the viewers to stick around as we have the opportunity to talk with our guest, Robert Drummond, the president and CEO of NexTier Oilfield Solutions, and have a little bit more of a conversation in the after show. So for this part of our show, want to thank all of you for joining us. And if you have to jump off, we understand. But if you can, stick around for the after show coming up right now.
Hi.
All right. So, great. Well, no, we're still kicking and rolling. I know, I think almost every week there's somebody that says, hey, Michael, like, just letting you know you're still on the air. And I'm like, yes, I know that. It's okay. Don't freak out. We, for those that haven't been a part, this is the after show. So we bring, all the folks that are helping with our production. So today we have Kamal with us, as well as Assaad and Shelby. So we'll continue our convo, and I don't want to derail the momentum too much, but I have to ask, Robert. So you're an Alabama guy. So how did you feel about recent happenings? I think you have a lot to feel good about, right?
Yeah, look, I really appreciate that question. It's one of my favorite subjects lately. but I have to admit, I got a lot of college football friends, and whenever I start talking about this subject, things can get tense.
Oh,
so
man.
I would just say is that I was just so proud of that program. You had to navigate COVID. They showed a lot of discipline and how they did that so they could keep the players and the coaches on the field. And, what a great thing college football, I thought, did for all of us in the sense that it kept going.
Yeah.
And it managed their way through it. And not a lot of people got to go to the games and all that. But, it was something that was normal, somewhat.
Yeah.
Well, so I was happy to be, on the fringes of that a little bit.
Robert, I don't want to be the cause of you losing any friendships here. So, I appreciate your candor here, and I'll just let that one just slide on down the road.
Yeah, because Alabama's a minority in the Oilfield for sure.
Yeah, I won't lie. I did go to Texas A&M, so I got a little bit of the Aggie spirit in me. But I think A&M's maybe hanging on a little too hard to that 1 year, first year in the SEC. But I'll do respect to Bama for sure.
Thank you. Both of my daughters went to A&M, and they remind me of that quite frequently.
Hey, we got that one time. That's all that counts.
It's great. It's a great environment. It sure is. I mean, kids get opportunity, and they go on to do better things, and it's just awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I really need to find something to contribute to when it comes to football discussions, because I have absolutely no idea what the rules are of the game or what the good teams or the bad teams are. To me, football is the one that's played with a foot. So, so when we talk about Barcelona or Real Madrid, that's kind of more my wheelhouse.
Well, maybe we need to take a field excursion for some in-person research one day, right? Is that what it is? Fact-finding mission. That's what it is. Fact-finding.
Shelby, you can take him to Cal Field. It's really close, and that's a great environment right there. You get converted pretty quick.
There you go.
That's right. Yeah, I brought many friends to that, and they were just like, "This is a whole new world."
So fun.
Mm-hmm.
Robert, one thing we like to ask, to people that are quite busy like yourself, usually, what do you do to stay in good mental health, to stay sane in these wild times?
My wife would say I got a lot of upside there. But I would just say that, look, we've been so busy at NexTier through this whole thing. It's like it was, to me, it wasn't as much of an impact on me because I was just so busy. Except for a couple of months right in the middle of it where we were doing more from home, and I would say is that having goals that keep you focused during any kind of crisis can really help you keep going. That's kind of the way I did it. Plus, I like to read a lot. And I spend a lot of time reading history and things like that. And so that, I think, keeps you grounded a bit on what's going on. Mm-hmm. But, I try to look at the bright side of this whole thing. I've enjoyed a lesser commute. I mean, there's some things about COVID that are, okay. I've been very impressed and surprised by how effective we've become working from home, working, with these tools. It's a great tool you have here feels like we're all together, and, the technology's working great. We're doing the same thing with Microsoft Teams, things like that allows us to be very effective. We've given our employee base, we got like a day in the middle of the week where most people come in, it's central, focus on our meetings for the week if we need to do those. And then portion of the people work from home on the first of the week, another portion on the backside of the week. And we haven't missed a beat. And I think that's because of our people are so dedicated and so good. But yeah, I think that, I think all of us got to figure out ways to get in the gym, work out. I've been hot and cold with that. I mean, I got a new Bowflex that holds my clothes pretty well.
That's right. You can thank Chuck Norris probably for that one. So
Yeah, somebody.
yeah.
It don't do any good if you just look at it.
I'm worth there. I've tried that many times. I thought I could just stare and something would happen, but apparently not.
Osmosis workout.
Yeah, I'm like, no thanks. Yeah, no, that's a good one on commute too. I mean, I know. I think Assaad, I've talked to you. Kamal, I don't know. Is your commute a lot shorter now? Yeah. Oh,
I think you're muted.
yeah, but I know you're. Yeah, so, I know you're working on getting unmuted. But Robert, your commute's pretty uneventful now, huh?
I would say it was improved by like 60%. You know, it was
wow.
at the max, the downside. But really quickly, I became to realize that if I was celebrating a good commute, I was, killing the demand side of oil and gas with my same wish there. So I can take a long commute as long as the business is.
If I have to,
You accidentally forget your laptop at the house every day. Is that what it is? Double round.
Yeah, just get out, do whatever you can do. Yeah. I've been trying to I try to do my share there of consumption with all my little toys and things.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a question. We actually got one just now from Douglas on LinkedIn, and he was just asking how recruiting's going for the kind of next generations of energy engineers and technicians. But I kind of also wanted to maybe elaborate on that a little bit. What do you have to say to that next generation? So we talked about college football, but those students in college who are wanting to join the industry, we get comments all the time from them, just worried about it. So what is your advice for that kind of next generation of engineers and technicians?
I appreciate that question, and I'll start it by saying that I have two young daughters that both are in the sector that recently got married last year to gentlemen that are both in the sector. So I guess in the background, I've been kind of promoting it and pointing out that we have a lot of runway in oil and gas. Mm-hmm. We have the introduction of technology at a rapid rate. And where do you want to go work? You want to go to work where there's been a lot of people spending a lot of time deploying new tools, technical tools, digital tools, and there's not a lot of there's incremental improvement, but incremental. Or do you want to come into work in a place where it's got a bunch of upside for your skill set? That's one thing. And then I'd say on the technical side, geologists, petroleum engineers, and so forth. When I got in the sector back in 1983, when I decided to become a petroleum engineer, every single graduate had multiple job offers. It didn't matter what, really, in petroleum engineering. By the time I graduated, they didn't even come to the university to interview. Mm-hmm. I stuck with it, got a job at Schlumberger straight out of school, and it's been nothing but just an experience that if you like status quo and you just like things to be the same every day, you might not like this industry. But if you like a lot of challenges and a lot of things changing all the time, exposure to the outdoors, exposure to the indoors, business, engineering, technology, and our sectors, risk and risk management and upside and downside. I mean, it's got it all. You live an exciting life. If you don't like that, then you might not want to do it. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Robert, I think I speak on behalf of the whole team and the whole audience. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I personally really enjoyed you being on Insight Out.
Hey, it was my honor. And man, you guys, this is a great show. I wish we would have thought of it, but maybe we might steal a little piece of it for internal. But you guys are doing a great job, and thank you for getting our voice out. And I think when the platforms that you're on, a lot of people are going to hear, and I think it's good news. Thank you.
Thank you for your partnership, and thank you for being with us on the show.
All the best.